Growing up, Lego was definitely one of the toys I would go back to again and again. We had 2 big boxes full of an assortment of pieces from lots of different places and people that we had gathered over the years. And now I have children, and my children are enjoying Lego just as much. Now, I think there are 2 main ways of playing with Lego. There is creating a model using an instruction manual, something very similar to this. This is from something that Ethan got fairly recently. And I suppose all Lego starts that way in the end. Or you can use an assortment of pieces. Here's our big box of Lego here. And using this assortment, create something entirely new from these pieces, even though they're all mixed up. Some people prefer one way, some people prefer the other. As we come to our passage we've just heard from Matthew, we see Jesus explaining about the nature of the kingdom of heaven using parables. And in our passage from Matthew, we hear this phrase 4 times. The kingdom of heaven is like. Jesus uses things familiar to the culture around him to try and explain something that in one sense is unexplainable. And so he gives us pictures, allegories, and he invites us through them to use our imagination so we can at least start to grasp what the kingdom looks like. And so the kingdom of heaven, he says, is like a mustard seed. It's like treasure hidden in a field. It's like a merchant looking for fine pearls. It's like a net that was let down into the lake and caught all kinds of fish. Each parable only gives us a small part of the picture or a part of a puzzle. But as we start to put them together, we begin to see the big picture of what the kingdom is all about. And so I just wonder whether, if Jesus were around today, walking the earth like he did 2,000 years ago, whether he would use something so familiar as Lego to help explain the nature of the kingdom, or at least explain it to children. Well, today I want to use Lego this morning as a picture, an allegory, to help me explain what God might want to say to us through these passages this morning. So let me offer you this. The kingdom of heaven is like a box of Lego with an assortment of pieces all mixed up and messy. A child took the pieces and out of them made something beautiful. Let me say that again. The kingdom of heaven is like a huge box of Lego with an assortment of pieces all mixed up and messy. A child took those pieces and out of them made something beautiful. My children love listening to an album by a musician called Randall Goodgame, and one of the lines of the song says this: God makes messy things beautiful when you put it in his hand. God makes messy things beautiful like only he can. In our passage from Matthew, we hear this phrase 4 times. The kingdom of heaven is like. Notice that Jesus doesn't say the kingdom of heaven is going to be like or that it will be like. It says that the kingdom of heaven is like. It's a present reality that can be known and experienced here and now. Paul writes in our passage from Romans about life in the Spirit. But it is the present reality of life in the kingdom. And so both passages are helping us to understand what it looks like to live as those of the kingdom, as those who pray, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as in heaven. Now, here. We see here the culture, the values of the kingdom of God. We see the nature of God, the ways of doing things that he does as opposed to the world. And what an incredible vision. Our God is the God of small things and small beginnings. The parables of the mustard seed and the yeast demonstrate that God is in the business of taking what is small and insignificant and through it bringing huge transformation and change. And so today, if you feel small and insignificant, like you don't have much to offer or give, you are in the right place to be used by God. Come to him with that attitude and get ready for him to use you in amazing ways. Our human, worldly valuations of what is great and important don't mean anything in the kingdom of God. Little becomes great when God is at work. And so Paul writes, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Our God is in the business of taking what is broken and making it beautiful for his purpose, for his kingdom to be built. John Newton was a militant atheist, bully and blasphemer. He was a wild and an angry young man. He was pressured into the Navy at the age of 18, where he broke seemingly every rule that could be broken, and he was publicly flogged for desertion. He was hated and feared by his fellow crewmates, and himself became a slave trader. At the age of 23, Newton's ship encountered a severe storm off the coast of Donegal and almost sank. He called out to God as his ship filled with water, and on that day, the 10th of March, 1748, God rescued him. He began a new life. He started to pray and read the Bible. Eventually, he joined with William Wilberforce and others in the campaign to abolish the slave trade, where he became a leading light. And of course, he is best known for the hymn Amazing Grace. He wrote these extraordinary words, "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see." To be rescued is to be saved, set free, delivered from danger, attack, or harm. Our God is in the business of rescuing. He is in the business of taking a broken man like John Newton and making him beautiful. God makes messy things beautiful when you put it in his hand. And I believe that God does not want to harm us. He does not want us to suffer or to be in pain. But we live in a broken, messy world with broken, messy people. Our brokenness and mess have spilt out to affect everything. Creation, then, is even broken. The impact is that bad things happen. There are consequences to the bad decisions we make, both as individuals and as a society. And we live in the reality of that every day. But, and the kingdom of God always starts with a but. But God is in the business of working for good for those who love him, of transforming our brokenness and mess and turning it for good. This was shown ultimately on the cross, when God took the most tragic moment in history, Jesus dying on the cross, and turned it for good to bring salvation to our world. So do you know what that means? That means that nothing is wasted. That God has the ability to take our bad decisions and turn them for good, to bring good out of them. And that is the nature of the kingdom. That is extraordinary. This means that nothing has been wasted, no failure or mistake. God takes them and, like a potter with clay, shapes them into something beautiful, like a master Lego maker with a box full of pieces that don't quite seem to fit. He makes the most beautiful model. The question is, will we allow him to do that in our lives? As a teenager, I remember having a conversation with a man in my church who was nearly completely blind. He had been prayed for many, many times that he would be healed. Prayers no doubt full of faith and belief that God could and can heal him. And he believed that God could heal him. But he also believed that God could take the brokenness of his blindness and use it and turn it for good. That God could work and speak through him and through his blindness. His faithfulness and trust in God, that God could make himself known through his blindness, that maybe even he could make himself more, that maybe even he could make himself known more, or as much as if he had been healed. The kingdom of God is like a huge box of Lego with an assortment of pieces all mixed up and messy. A child took the pieces and out of them made something beautiful. Today, would we allow God to take the mess and brokenness of our lives and turn them into something beautiful? Amen.